Are you thinking about lifting your Toyota truck? Well, I think you totally should, by the way, but as the owner of a 4Runner that's been lifted for the last 6+ years, I feel like there's a few things that you're going to want to know about, you're going to want to consider before you go ahead and pull the trigger on lifting yours, because it's not for everybody. So the first thing is that you might actually make your truck worse by lifting it. And I mean that in terms of like ride quality and handling. Handling wise, you know, of course, raising the center of gravity is going to make it more top heavy, and it's going to be worse in, you know, like sweeping high speed corners like on ramps and stuff like that. And I did notice that in my 4Runner as well. Ride quality though can go either direction. It depends on what you're upgrading to and the style of lift that you're going to get, whether it's spacers, whether you're adding preload. You got linear versus progressive setups. That's a whole separate video, I think. But in the case of my 4Runner with the Fox 2.0 suspension, it improved the ride quality greatly in all aspects. I've also heard stories from other people, like a friend of mine with a Tundra that put a set of King suspension on his, and I think due to the spring rate that he had on the front end, it caused it to ride quite firm to the point where he's like, this rides rougher than before I spent the thousands of dollars on fancy suspension with reservoirs and stuff. So you're going to want to really look into the ride quality of the suspension system that you're planning on upgrading to, and just see what people that are running it have said about what it feels like. You can't just assume that it's going to get better. I know there was a guy here on YouTube that made a video telling everybody not to lift their Toyota Tacomas because I guess he lifted his previous truck and it rode like crap. He had some like cheap ready lift setup or something like that. And so he's telling everybody, just get bigger size tires and leave your suspension stock, and that's the best thing you can do for your Tacoma. Speaking from experience, that's what I did. My own Tacoma is still on stock suspension and it just has beefier tires on it. And compared to my 4Runner with the Fox suspension on it, it is not even close. It's night and day. The 4Runner with the Fox suspension rides way better than the factory Tacoma setup. I don't know what that guy's smoking, but this is all kind of a matter of personal preference, and people kind of see things and feel things differently. But it is something to consider if you're gonna be lifting your truck. Next up, you might actually have to buy more parts than you were planning on buying to lift your truck. Again, it depends on what you're doing, but it's not as simple as just buying a set of spacers or buying new springs or buying a set of coilovers. But there might be more to it than that. Depending on your lift height, you might need to upgrade your upper control arms in order to get your alignment back in spec. Otherwise, your truck is going to be wandering all over the highway because your caster is way out of whack. And speaking of which, more than likely you're going to have to get a completely new alignment done on your truck to get it driving properly again. And depending on the shop you take it to, could be a couple $100 extra that you need to factor in. There's other things too that it depends on the truck and what kind of model of truck you have, but sometimes you need to do like a front differential drop or something like that. Something to consider. So make sure you do your research on what you need to put this whole package together. Think of it as a whole system. I don't like referring to it as lifting a truck. I look at it more as upgrading the suspension, because, you know, lifting it up just to make it look different and ride like crap or whatever, that's not what we're really doing here. We're upgrading our suspension to ride better, be more functional off-road, maybe be more reliable, depending on if you have like X-Ria suspension and stuff like that. But anyways, you're upgrading your suspension system. You're not jacking up your truck. Real quick guys, I've actually been putting a lot of time into my email newsletter lately, and I've branded it. It's called Gearhead Grinds now. It comes out every Sunday at 10 a.m. The idea is I want to give you something to read or something to watch while you're drinking coffee on a Sunday morning, while you're just relaxing being a car guy. I'm actually in the process right now of filming a behind the scenes video of this video that you're watching right now and showing how I make a YouTube video. And that's going to be a secret video. That's not going to be posted publicly on this channel. I'm going to be sending that out to everybody on Sunday morning. If you're interested, I'll put a link down below. Go ahead and sign up for the email newsletter. I got a whole bunch of other stuff that I send out in that. So I think most of us upgrade our suspension for two main reasons. Number one, we want to improve the ride quality, of course. And number two, we usually want to be able to fit a bigger size tire, right? Now, something to consider though is that in a lot of cases, especially with bigger size tires, just lifting your suspension is not going to be enough to be able to clear them, especially depending on the shape of your wheel wells and stuff. So in this case, on the 4Runner, I did lift it about 2.25 inches. And if I would have left things alone, these 285 7017s or 33s would not have fit. And so I had to move my fender liners forward. I had to trim the bumper down here. I didn't have to chop the body mount. That was good. Look at how dirty this 4Runner is. Oh my gosh, Tim, I thought you were a detailer. Coming back here, you'll notice I had to trim my mud flaps off the back. So I had to do some modifications and some trimming in order to fit this tire size despite lifting it up off the ground. It wasn't quite as simple as just changing the suspension. If you want to run big tires, you still are probably going to have to do some modifications and definitely some trimming. So I think everybody can assume that when you lift your truck, you're probably going to take a hit when it comes to fuel economy, and your MPGs are going to drop. And most of that is going to be because of the bigger tires you're going to run, because most people that lift their trucks are also going to upsize their tires to something bigger, and also more than likely a more aggressive tread design. So that's where the majority of your MPG loss is going to come in from. But with that said, don't expect that if you're running stock tires with your newly lifted truck, you're still going to get the same fuel economy, because you might still lose some even with the factory tires or the factory tire size. Case in point, look at the modern trucks and the stupid little plastic air dam that they put underneath the front bumper. They're doing that for aerodynamic reasons, obviously, right? You know, they're thinking about the air that is getting swept up underneath the truck in terms of aerodynamics, and that can potentially impact your fuel economy. So by not only not having one of those on your older truck, but then also raising your ride height up, you're allowing more air underneath, it could affect your fuel economy. Is it going to be that big of a difference? I'm not convinced it will make that much of a change, but it probably will affect it somewhat. Something that most people probably don't account for when they're going to be putting a lift kit on their truck is the different maintenance items that might need to be replaced that are worn out that you had no idea were worn out. So you're thinking about, like, you know, ball joints and control arm bushings and axle boots and stuff like that you haven't been under there for a little while, and once you start taking things apart, you realize, oh crap, that needs to be replaced, that's worn out. And it can add up pretty darn quickly, because you're thinking, well, I have everything ripped apart, I may as well fix this stuff and either save myself some labor at a shop or save myself some time and some busted knuckles if I'm doing it myself. So it's something to maybe not consider because you don't really know what's going on, but prepare yourself that you might run into something in there that is going to need attention while you're in there. Also, for all of you that are like myself that like to park your Toyota truck in the garage to keep it nice and safe and cozy and, you know, not have to wipe snow off it in the wintertime, did you measure your garage door to make sure that you can still get in? Because you're in for a rude awakening. And even worse, now I know you guys wouldn't make this mistake, you guys are some fine, smart people, but there are some people that maybe take the truck apart in their garage and they install their lift and they put the big tires on. And they try to drive out of the garage and they realize that it won't fit and they're stuck in their own garage. Now, again, I know you wouldn't do that, but something to think about. Also, parking garages, you know, like if you're planning on heading down to Toronto for the Jays game and you're gonna park in the Skydome, and by the way, it's the Skydome forever. It's not the Rogers Center. If you consider your taller ride height, your taller tires, and then maybe you've got like an aftermarket roof rack on there or something like that, are you still gonna be able to fit in a standard size parking garage? You're gonna wanna make sure about that if that's important to you. Another thing to think about, especially on the bigger trucks like the Tundras and the Sequoias that are really tall and big already to begin with, maybe this is more for the short kings out there, that you have to think about how difficult it's gonna be to work on this thing now. You gotta be able to still reach up into your engine bay to change your oil, and do you really wanna be, you know, crowd surfing off your fender trying to reach your oil cap? Or do you want to have to get a ladder out every time you're trying to reach something on your vehicle? I know myself, I'm 6'3", and whenever I wash my 4Runner, I have to get a little step ladder out just to be able to wash the roof properly, to be able to reach up there. Now, lifting your truck will not void your warranty unless it does. Now, let me explain. A lot of people think that as soon as you upgrade something like that, all of your factory warranty is now voided, and that's not the case. There's something that came out called the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, and that was basically legislation that said if the part that you changed is not related to the part that failed, it should still be covered under warranty. So if you lift your truck and your engine blows up or your heated seat stops working, that's still gonna be covered under your warranty. At least it should. And if your dealer gives you a hard time, you need to push back against that. Now, if you lift your truck and your ball joint blows up prematurely, that's on you. You messed with the suspension, that's been changed, then it does void your warranty. Let's talk about towing. And depending on your setup, of course, there's a good chance that your towing performance is gonna be decreased if you lift your truck. Because for me, I think the main thing is, you know how popular it is to get your ride height sitting perfectly level when you upgrade your suspension? Everybody's all about leveling kits. You gotta raise the front end. You gotta get rid of the factory rake. Well, that factory rake is there for a reason, and that's so that when you hook up a trailer or you load up your bed with a heavy load, it's gonna compress down and then ride level while it's being used as a work truck or whatever. If you've already leveled your suspension with your lift kit and it's sitting perfectly level when it's unloaded, now when you hook a heavy trailer up or something, your headlights are gonna be pointed at the sky, blinding all the oncoming drivers. You're gonna be hitting your bump stops on sharp bumps and stuff like that. So that's something to consider, and also think about the stiffness of your suspension as well. Like, so for my 4Runner, it had factory air suspension in the back that would adjust for a load, so I didn't have to really worry about that. And the springs that I did swap that out for are fairly heavy duty springs, and they're actually meant to carry like a pretty significant load. And so I'm able to tow with my 4Runner, and it sits perfectly level with a bunch of tongue weight on the trailer hitch. But if you're running a much softer setup, which is probably gonna ride better, especially on the street and stuff, there's a good chance that that's gonna compress easier when you put a load in it or you fill up your bed with something, and now you'll be dragging your rear bumper on the ground looking like an idiot, or like you're from Carolina, but no offense, Carolinians. Carolinians? Anyways. I got one last one for you, and this is for you DIYers that are gonna be installing your lift kit yourself that also happen to live in a northern state or province like myself. It might be a lot more difficult to install that lift than they make it seem in the instructions or on the YouTube videos or your buddy that helped a buddy install their lift kit. We got rust here, and I swear every single thing I do on one of these Toyota trucks up here, again here in Ontario, we use a lot of road salt in the wintertime. And what should be maybe a 3 or 4 hour install ends up being a full weekend of torches and hammers and sledgehammers and crying and bloody knuckles, just trying to get one seized bolt free. And anyways, those are 10 things that you guys need to think about before you lift your Toyota truck. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.